very common conditions, which is almost a bread and butter of almost all orthopedic surgeons. That is some diseases of the tendons. Now there are several shadow zones of this. What is the nomenclature? What should be the ideal nomenclature? What should be the ideal pathology? These are remain unclear for the very few days. So we have to have a journey for another 30-40 minutes, following which we have some question and answers. As I am love to give some share of a knowledge. So always knowledge is always incomplete. Every human being is incomplete. So we will be enriched. We are sharing our knowledge. So ladies and gentlemen, and the delegates, today we'll start with our new topic, that is the tendinopathy case studies. See, we'll discuss about the case studies of various tendinopathies, whereas pathologic correlation, I already told there are some shadowy zones. We'll discuss about their conditions as also the medical management, the current update. So we have to see whether that is a 40 years old male is physically active. Presentation is intermittent bilateral Achilles pain for 3.5 years, 3.5 years. It's a mild and intermittent pain depending on the activity level. And it's after 6 months, it increased and is worsened on the right side, followed by the left one with gradually progressive symptoms. And ultimately, the previously say it leads to the wrist pain on the, especially on the right side. Okay. So there is activity pain. Its pain is increasing following the activity. And there is stiffness in the morning, which is gradually eases off with the movement. And when patient starts, that patient feels pain, and when it continues walking, gradually it pain relieves. And after walking for several steps, patient again pain again recurs. That is the usual story. And ultimately, patient is complaining of the stiffness during these routine activities. 4 months later, the scenario has become changed. There are several treatments, general treatments offered, but still the patient has a progression of the stiffness and discomfort. The limping while walking, is unable to do the nocturnal activities. And the US and the power Doppler study shows it is a longitudinal transverse section. So the peri and intratendinous neovascularization, whereas the collagen and matrix degeneration. So 6 months later, what happens? This is a temporary relief. There is recurrence of symptoms with the light physical activity, incapable to pursue the strenuous activity like running, and could not tolerate the physiotherapy sessions, discontinued. This is another case where the patient is 52 years old woman. It is difficulty to move the right shoulder with the 6 months T2 diabetic, that is type 2 diabetes mellitus. Patient is diagnosed as the calcific tendinopathy of interspinatus based on the imaging. You can see here, the pain is increased, VAS score is 10/10. There is a painful limitation of the right shoulder movements. There are several limitations of the movements, and there is constant shoulder score was 35/100 in right shoulder. Now the patient is offered the NSAIDs, that is extracorporeal shockwave therapy, but the patient is complained of the petechial rash with NSAIDs. That is why he has stopped it, and ultimately the extracorporeal shockwave therapy is continued, but the drug NSAID stopped and is switched over to the amitriptyline and the colchicine, but there is no improvement in 2 months. So these are the scenario. The first case, that is the tendinopathy of the tendo Achilles, whereas on the second case, it is a calcific tendinopathy of the infraspinatus tendon. There is another case. There is a 58 years old athletic person, previously has a race course, swelling with a local tenderness in the local lateral aspects of the ankle, on his right ankle. There is swelling increased for past 10 years, very, very gradual onset. And there's initial asymptomatic, ultimately patient is activity is restricted. Swelling with that, there is along with the swelling, there is no signs of infection. Previously, he could walk for a long time. Ultimately, patient's athletic activity is restricted. Ultimately, currently, the patient is complaining of the unpleasant sensation and on the outer aspect of the ankle, as well as pain while walking. There is occasional wrist pains developed during the course of the time. Mobility is restricted. Patient was unable to walk for a long period. And ultimately, Patient is complaining of mild ankle joint distortion previously. Now another case, so this is a beneath the swelling, there is a hard mobile nodule. This case is showing the hard mobile nodule 6 centimeter proximal to the lateral malleolus, but the X-ray was not done due to some reason, but the MRI was done instead. It was referred from another person, and MRI shows there is localized symptoms of the proximal end of the peroneus tendon, whereas the mobility of the ankle was not restricted. Now the MRI shows a significant, or there is hypointense area, which is 3 into 1 centimeter in T1 and T2 shadow, and that is diagnosed as a altered signal intensity. Probably it is a tendinopathy of the peroneal tendons, and there are no signs of calcification. So there is another tendinopathy cases which is relatively rare in the peroneal tendons. There is another case. There is a 44 years old female housewife complaining of the stabbing pain in the right foot bottom near the heel for 1 year. Patient pain on the first few steps in the morning and after period of activity, and the pain increased during the activity on the standing, and the symptoms commensurate with the published guidelines. Yes, all of you know that is maybe the case of the plantar fasciitis. And there is body mass index is 29, that means obese, which is very close to, very associated with the obese persons. And there are some say the over pronation and the flat foot deformity. Patient was physically active. There is no hormonal dysfunction, no rheumatic diseases. And there is patient is complaining of the medial side of the heel pain, and there is specifically there a point tenderness which is close to the calcaneal tuberosity on the undersurface of the calcaneum. This Wagner 4-stain model shows the low pressure pain threshold, is suggesting of the inflammation. Pain is most noticeable in the morning, reduced after the painful 30 minutes walk, and there is associated hamstring tightness on the left side, demonstrated the fatigue on the movement testing. Pain intensity score was 6 by 10 on the initiation of the treatment. Her score is both positive in active and passive plantar flexion and the dorsiflexion. There is another case, a 35 years old healthy man, prior history of the amateur football playing. Presentation is the right anterior knee pain for last 3 years. There is painful spot is located on the right patellar tendon insertion. There is constant dull-aching pain while walking, which is forced to stop course. And the previous treatment was NSAIDs, physical therapy, steroid injection, but is no improvement on current pain. Within the first score remains 7 by 10. Again, there is a ultrasonography there, and the Doppler study, the power Doppler study shows the neovascularization. That is the mainstay. I already showed. There's all the tendinopathy cases. There are shows once there is a rest pain, which is closely correlated with the ultrasonographic finding, as also the power Doppler study showing the neovascularization. That is the main the stay of this evening. Now there is that suggests there is a degenerative tendinopathy, and there is an intertendinous edema which is proximal to the patellar tendon interface. There is immature tortuous dilated blood vessels invading the tendon mass, and that ultimately suggests the degenerated collagen matrix in the tendon. So this is basically, these are the tendinopathy which doesn't show the degeneration, but it is beyond the degeneration. Degeneration is following the neovascularization, and that is the basis of these increased thickness of the tendon to Achilles, whereas it is easily palpable for the Achilles tendon thickness, whereas whether the tendon is subcutaneous, unless if it is very deep enough. Suppose it's, I already showed, this is a calcific tendinitis of the infraspinatus tendon, which is not visible, but that will, if it is increased in size, that will lead to the impingement syndrome, and that requires some attention of the clinician. Whereas there is plantar fasciitis, very common plantar fasciitis, and then that will lead to the significant restriction of the functional activity. And lastly, the anterior patellar tendinitis. So this is the patellar tendinitis you can see here. So this is also suggests that this is a degenerative tendinopathy with significant neovascularization. Neovascularization invading the tendon mass. There is intertendinous edema proximal to the patellar tendon, and that again it suggests the degenerated collagen matrix in the tendon. So see, all this suggests that tendinopathy, which is a constant feature, is there is degeneration as well as some new vascularization. And that is the basis. We see the tendon is avascular structures. So how it can cause pain? How the pain is generated from the tendon back? Because it is avascular structure. Unless it is become inflamed. That is why there is initially it was erroneously nomenclatured as a tendinitis. But ultimately, the pathogenesis suggests that it is not basically is an inflammation. Basically, it is a degeneration. And degeneration is a special feature with some neovascularization as well as some there's neural formation of neural tissue formation that will lead to some pain in the relatively avascular tendinous structures. There's another case. This 35 years old male is presented with right forearm pain with gradual worsening over the 1 month. There's amateur. He's an amateur squash player. 5 to 6 times is complaining of pain per week for last 1 year, but still he continues to play. The forearm pain is usually complained of prior to the initial visit in the late cock-up positions, the late acceleration positions, and the pain is increased after the playing, and it takes longer warm-up, no pain during game, reaching and gripping leads to pain, 2 weeks, there's no improvement. So the patient is complaining the pain is dull and achy in nature, that is vascular 6 to 10. Location is the medial right ventral aspect of the forearm. No pain was referred to the other part. There's no paresthesia in the arm and the hand, which usually excludes some neurological entrapment syndrome. Now the patient is, there is no bruising, no edema at all. Palpation of the medial epicondylis is complaining of pain or tenderness. And basically the standard point is at actually 4 to 5 centimeter, within 4 to 5 centimeter of the medial epicondyle. So this is not over the epicondyle, but it's on the soft tissues. The next one is that the pronator teres muscles palpation. So on the tapping on the pronator teres muscles and the palpation on the pronator teres muscle doesn't produce any tenderness, but there is tenderness is located on the 5 to 6 centimeter region, close to the medial epicondyle. So, and the neurological sensation was absolutely normal. The special test shows the pronator teres test is negative. Pronator teres basically it is tested with the help of the elbow is extended, as also the pronation is done with elbow extension, and the pronation is resisted. And then this test is negative in this case, suggesting that it is not a case of the pronator teres syndrome, which is impinging, causing the entrapment neuropathy on the medial nerve. Next is the Mills test. Mills test is negative, and this is done with the elbow. It is extended, and the wrist is the elbow is flexed, pronated, and the wrist is extended. And this Mills test suggestive of the lateral epicondylitis. This is also negative in this case. Whereas active resistant medial epicondylitis test is positive. That is, the elbow is extended and it is flexed against resistance. As also the passive wrist extension and the supination test is also positive. This is specific for the inflammation of the common flexure pronator area close to the medial epicondyle. Basically, though, all of you know, so this is the diagnosis of the medial epicondylitis, but this is absolutely misnomer, because there is neither inflammation, neither the location of the disease is in the medial epicondyle. But basically, the disease actually is in the tendons. Is the common tendons is the flexure pronator group. So basically, there is a micro trauma when this type of muscles is the repeated sustained of repeated loading. That will lead to microtrauma. Ultimately, there is to degeneration, and that will lead to a neovascularization, as you can see in other cases. So that is basically it is not a disease of the medial epicondyle, but that is close to it. So in that sense, that can be called as a tendinopathy of the common flexor pronator group, or it can be called epicondylalgia. That means epicondylalgia, the technique, and that is pain is coming around the epicondyle. So medial epicondyle. So that can be the ideal nomenclature in this case. So there's another case. The pain is complaining of there's a 49 years old female housewife, occasional strenuous work, and the pain is complaining on the outer aspect of the right elbow for last 3 months. Pain is referred to on the top of the shoulder and into the forearm for last 1 month. And not only that, the patient is complaining of the ache most of the time, aggravated with use, and there is a pain and needles in the thumb and the first web space, and there is no numbness, heat, cold, mottling skin, neck, and the chest walls pain. So basically, gripping the elbow flexion, the wrist extension aggravates the pain. Long static positions for more than 30 minutes is intolerable. Rest eases, but not too long. Heat eases actually in this case, but longer rest stiffens the joint. That there is a patient is complaining of difficulty to move the elbow joint. Patient is complaining very stiff in the morning. Ultimately, with activity, it gradually eases the movement. And ultimately, if it continues the movement, at the end of the day, in the evening, patient is complaining again for the pain, and ultimately again it is relieved with some activity. So it is a gradual onset over the 2 years, resorts in last 3 months since heightened activities, no particular reason for starting, no obvious trauma. So in this particular case, there is no past problems in the arm, previous treatment for the foot problems in 2000 years, but there is no medications will help, no circulatory issues, no allergies, no pacemaker, no family history of rheumatoid arthritis, no diabetes mellitus, epilepsy, high blood pressure, hemophilia, and fits. Basically, poor posture, flexed, mild spine, thoracic extended cervical spine. You can see here, and there's a right forearm and the elbow look vested. There is no swelling, no color changes. Basically, the neck, in this case, neck movement shows a relatively good range, but the steep, especially on the right rotation. Shoulders is a full range of motion is there, but there is no pain and stiffness. But the first and second rib region is little bit stiff and tight, and there's outer neck muscles are also tight. There's a good shoulder stability control. The patient is complaining of the stiff elbow movement, wrist extension painful at the end of the range, wrist flexion pull in the forearm muscles, grip is relatively weak, grip is painful. Basically, Cosen's test is positive in this case, and that is suggestive of the lateral epicondylitis. Again, this lateral epicondylitis, it is a misnomer because that is not actually the inflammation, not at all inflammation, not at all a disease of the lateral epicondyle. Basically, there is a degeneration or microtrauma, basically in the backhand stroke, during this backhand stroke, or when the patient is doing the extension of the elbow and extension of the wrist, that will lead to sudden stretching of the extensor carpetalis brevis muscles, basically, and that will lead to the microtrauma in these muscles. That will ultimately, if it is not healed, that initially that causes some inflammations in this, particularly in this case, but ultimately that will lead to fibrosis at this origin, and that full-blown tendinopathy, and it is almost suggested by the other, as also can see in other investigations. Elbow and extension, there's same time, I'm not going to detail, but see the same type of finding as you can see in other cases. That is the degenerative changes, as also the neovascularization invading the tendon mass. And this is a basic, the same picture we can see in all other cases, apart from this, starting from this tendinopathy, tendo-Achilles tendinopathy, supraspinatus, that is anterior, the patellar tendinitis, that is peroneal tendinopathy, as also the plantar fasciitis, and also the lateral epicondylitis, and also the medial epicondylitis, though it is a nomenclature is a misnomer. So that is why what now we have to see. So is the so now we have learned about the nomenclature is not actually correct. This is not basically what we'll call it is a tendinopathy or tendinitis. So it is basically from this tendinitis means the inflammation, but basically there is no typical inflammation in this case. So basically it is a tendinopathy, it is a degenerative condition, but it is a type of special degeneration. So that is why degeneration plus neovascularization, that is the best nomenclature is the tendinopathy. That is one. Second one, now this pathology can explain how the relatively avascular tendons can provide the painful or tender area, or it has a thickening of the tendon. So if it is I've already told, if the tendon that which is affected is relatively in the surface, that causes the thickening, which is easily picked up by the clinicians, and we can diagnose this tendinopathy like the tendo-Achilles tendinopathy. But if it is relatively deep-seated like this, the rotator cuff, especially of which the supraspinatus is the most commonly common member involved. But here I already showed the infraspinatus is also it's another member which can also be involved. So in that case, that can lead to the impingement syndrome or restriction of the motions. So, and also the medial epicondyle and lateral epicondyle, which is very common in our clinical practice. So these are the this can easily explain how the pain and the swelling and the restriction of the motion comes out from a tendinopathy in this case. So now let us little bit understand what is the structure of the tendon. Basically, there are three types of structure. It is tendon is consisting of the collagen fibers, which is type 1 collagen, which arrays of a very regular arrangement. This type 1 collagen. and another is the tendon cells, the tenoblast and tenocytes. Basically, they are motile, they are very much motile, and their motility is depending on two factors. There is the extracellular matrix formation. Basically, it is composing of the glycosaminoglycans and the water, as also the local oxygen supply. So basically, the type 1 collagen is basically it is a femur, whereas the tendon cells basically they produce the extracellular matrix, and they are depending on the matrix. They are very much motile, and this motility depends on the two. There is the extracellular matrix formation, as also the local oxygen supply from the peripheral part. So the oxygen, if the oxygen supply is very good, the tendon perfusion is normal or enhanced. So in that case, there is anabolism develops. So that will lead to the tenocyte proliferation, collagen matrix production, reduction of the pro-inflammatory mediators, collagen and matrix regeneration. Whereas if there is reduction of the oxygen supply, that is in hypoxic state, so what will develop, there is a catabolism that leads to tenocyte apoptosis, collagen and matrix under production, pro-inflammatory mediators production, and that this collagen and matrix breakdown. So what happens? So how it happens? If there is a repetitive loading activity, like the long distance runner, that can lead to some micro trauma in the plantar fascia, that will lead to the plantar fasciitis. There are the javelin throwers or the squash players, that can lead to the repetitive loading or activity on their common flexure pronator group or the supinator extensor group on the elbow, or in the shoulder. There is a rotator cuff, that will lead to repetitive micro trauma, that can lead to the micro injury, and that will lead to hypoxia, and that can lead to the catabolism, and that these are the products, that the tenocyte apoptosis and the reduction of the extracellular matrix, which reduces the motility, as also ultimately that will lead to the rupture of the tendon. So early tendinopathy, basically it is a degeneration plus something. So it is a much more than degeneration. So ultimately its extent of damage depends on the extent of the tenocyte death, adaptation of the tenocytes to survive, as also the tenocyte function, whereas the timeline of the degenerative process. And there is dysregulated apoptosis that will lead to the leukocyte recruitment, subsequent cytokine production, and there is no inflammation, but ultimately there is a reduced tenocyte count, which will lead to fraying of the tendons, ultimately rupture of the tendons. And imbalance in the normal collagen regulation that reduces the type 1 native collagen, and that breakdown, and increase type 3 collagen, which is not healthy, and that the resilience is relatively less. So if you see this hypoxia level, so there is a normal tendon, if it is at less than 10% fiber is affected, that will lead to mild degeneration. 10 to 20% fibers affected, that will moderate degeneration. Whereas more than 10%, once it is more than 10% fiber area is affected, that there's a severe escalation of the degeneration. Ultimately, that will lead to neovascularization, as also some this cytokine production, that is which is cytokines which is liberated from the dead cells, that will invite the leukocyte aggregation, and ultimately that will fibrosis, which is not very resilient enough to sustain the load. Ultimately, that will lead to the tendon rupture. So the effect, what is the effect of the hypoxia on the tendon composites? You can see here that basically these that induces the tenocyte apoptosis, that is hypoxia induced fibrosis, that are due to liberation of the several enzymes that alters the tenocyte collagen matrix regulation, reduction of the different cytokines you can see here, that which is a pro-inflammatory, as also it increases some markers which can lead to some destruction of the matrix. Whereas it promotes the cytokine production in the tenocytes. You can see here there are interleukin 8, interleukin 6. There are several the cytokines also liberated that will lead to leukocyte recruitment and infiltration. And there is interleukin 8, interleukin 6, and which activates the matrix metalloproteinase, which actually that damages the matrix and that depletes the matrix, that ultimately, and because of this accumulation of the cells, that increases the thickness of these tendons. This is which is a full-blown picture of the tendinopathy. And this enhanced tissue turnover is poorly organized tissue. Ultimately, ultimately goes to the fate of rupture. So if you see the histopathology, in this case, you can see this type 1 collagen is how much it is regularly, it is tightly bundled. You can see here. Whereas there is an extracellular matrix is damaged, these fibers are disorganized. You can see this disorganized, and that is this is the normal tendons picture. You can see in the ultrasonography. The normal longitudinal is the cross-sectional study. You can see here normal thickness of the tendons. Whereas in the tendinopathies, how much it is increased, you can see here. So this can be, it's a very good quality radiograph of the in the ankle joint, it's lateral ankle joint. Suppose it is a tendinopathy of the tendon Achilles, and this type of radiograph you can easily pick it up with the Cager's fat. Cager's fat, there is a Cager's triangle actually, Cager's triangle, and if this Cager's triangle should be continuous, if the Cager's triangle is obscure in some areas, that is that tendinopathy should, that tendon should be tendon is suffering from the tendinopathy, and that should be protected for being the rupture. And see this the cross-sectional study is how much it is thickened. This thickening is due to accumulation of there is attraction of the leukocyte and also the cytokines, which is attracting the several unwanted tissues, as also the neovascularization areas. So tendon revascularization in the health, what does it leads to that? The persistent reduction of the oxygen concentration that leads to anaerobic in metabolisms, that will lead to hypoxia induced fibrosis. There are several cytokines reduced. There is a failed tendon repair. There is early tendinopathy that will lead to again they say leads to several liberation of the several enzymes, and that will lead to ultimately the neovascularization as well as the neo-innervation. This is the newer theory which is added with this previous model, and this is basically neo-innervation, which is responsible for production of the substance P, which is responsible for pain production. There's pain generation from these affected tendons, and this neovascularization that is basically responsible for the increased thickness of the affected tendons, and ultimately that will lead to the rupture of the tendons. So immature leaking, this because of the neovascularization, this immature leaking new vessels that will because the persistent hypoxia that will lead to further increased neovascularization, further degeneration, ultimately that will lead to rupture, and further the anaerobic metabolism, if it continues, that produces production of the lactic acid that actually this accumulates inside this inside these tendons, further reduction of these nutrients to the tenocytes and tenoblasts. So this is actually ultimately the sum of result is the tendon failure and the tendon pain. So this is actually just I'm repeating, say how the well organized the collagen fibers becomes disorganized, and this normal structure becomes disorganized and is easily picked up with the help of the ultrasonography, as also the power Doppler study. As you can see here, this it shows clearly shows the neovascularized areas, which is normally it is not seen in the normal tendons. So so graded progression of the tendinopathy is initially it's an intermittent pain, especially in the starting of the movement. There is no actual rest pain initially. Ultimately, gradually it becomes pain. Is frequently it is coming gradually it is coming from walking for prolonged period or continuation of the activity, and ultimately there are some triggers, and the triggers basically is overuse, overload, overstretching, repetitive injury, trauma. Ultimately that leads to and there are some also predisposing disease like diabetes mellitus, rheumatoid arthritis, etc., and that will lead to ultimately that is makes the affected tendons susceptible to produce some different enzymes. Ultimately that will lead to the degeneration, discomfort, movement restriction, and gradually it becomes advances, and ultimately they see this is 45 days, then 2 to 4 months, 3 to 9 months. Ultimately it actually ruptures within 1 year. So you will get the total 1 year, that is 365 days for protecting the diseased tendons. So we have to identify, so from which we have what we have learned. So there is an intermittent pain, that is the early condition of the tendinopathy, and we have if there's some triggering factor, that is a continuation of the specific activity, and you can see. So if the ultimately this patient is complaining of a rest pain, that indicates the advanced condition of the tendinopathy, and we will be very much scared of at that stage. We will be very much we have to be vigilant at that stage. We have to take care of the tendons, and ultimately there are several investigations, specifically the ultrasonography and the power Doppler study. If it is positive, if it shows the positive findings like the increased thickness of the tendons, specific tendons, or the calcification, though the calcification most of the cases is ultimately it is gradually it is self-resolution occurs in the calcific tendinitis, but ultimately that degeneration persists, and ultimately that will lead to the rupture. So we're not very much vigilant about it to prevent this devastating condition. So basically, if we make a sum up of this, what we have learned about it. So basically, what happens in this tendinopathy, there's a hypoxia, which is a central event in the tendinopathy. Basically, what happens in this cascade of the reactions, there is a discontinuation and disorganized collagen fibers, and there is a loss of tenocytes. Tenocytes, their losses their motility, as well as the number of tenocytes reduces, and ultimately what happens, there is a matrix which is basically generated by the tenoblast. Matrix is also reduced. Collagen, there is a collagen loss, there is abnormal collagen fiber disorientation, and there is neovascularization, as also the neoinnervation as it advances. So and there is production of the substance P, which is a full-blown picture of pain. Nature always try to protect it. That is always give some signal to the clinicians, to the patients, to the clinicians, so that it can be protected. So up to at this stage, if no one can take the protection, ultimately that will lead to rupture, and that is a devastating. That is a very severe and a devastating condition. See, there are knowledge is gradually is progressing 1970 to 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010, and ultimately 2020. So see, so initially it was termed as a tendinitis. Now we have already understood that is not a proper inflammation. Basically, it is a degeneration. Ultimately, in 2000, after the 20th decade, we have understood this is not a degeneration, but degeneration without inflammation, only presence of some markers, and not all, but ultimately at the end of the 2020, we understood this is not a simple degeneration. It is along with the same degeneration, there is neovascularization as also neoinnervation. So therapeutic targets of tendinopathy is basically it's a regeneration. So always we have to target to regenerate the tenocytes, that you have to regenerate the collagen, as also the matrix synthesizer growth factors. Basically, that will help the symptomatic improvement. That will actually reduce the inflammation, which is a byproduct. It is not an ideal one. It's a byproduct of the tendon dysfunction, and that will reduce the pro-inflammatory markers. Another is the regeneration. That is with the help, we have to attack on the hypoxia. So by there are several ways that there are non-medical ways, like the laser, shockwave therapy, gene therapy, prolotherapy, sclerotherapy, as well as physical medicine, therapeutic ultrasound, and physical therapy. So for the medical management, basically medical management starts with the NSAIDs, but it is produce a very temporary, so that it doesn't continue, and ultimately that there is no long-term benefit. There is intertendinous corticosteroids, but basically it is almost contraindicated for the weight-bearing tendons, like or the lower limb, specifically, as you can see here, is a tendo Achilles, because that initiates the rupture. So that is almost, it is completely banned now. Now the platelet-rich plasma, again, it can produce the short-term benefit. It is also under the study, but it is not a absolute foolproof evidence that it can significantly causes the healing. As also, there is no evidence till now that it can prevent the recurrence of the development of the tendinopathy. Another is the autologous blood injection. It has the same fate like the platelet-rich plasma, and it is it is technically demanding procedure. So still it is under the experimental stage. So there is some also no strong evidence that it can prevent the recurrence, as also it can cause the complete healing by production of this there is tumor necrosis factor, tumor growth factor, as also some specific beneficial cytokines. That is the nitroglycerin patch. Yes, nitroglycerin patch is effective for the short-term benefit or in the form of the pain relief, and but it has there is no evidence that it can produce the long-term benefit. And there is the high-volume injections, that is also under experimental study. So this is not actually the ideal treatment. Now NSAIDs, again NSAIDs. It is commonly and widely used for both the oral and topical. It is a tendinopathic tissues. It is non-responsive to NSAIDs, so it is lack of inflammatory process. There is no reparative response. That is reduced tenocyte formations, and then the collagen synthesis. There is no improvement in the symptoms, no improvement in tendon function. So basically, it is not recommended as the treatment of tendinopathy for the long run. Intertendinous corticosteroid, I already told it is that is almost banned for the lower limb. Basically, it's a weight-bearing tendons. Now, the intratendinous corticosteroid, there are several evidence suggests electron light microscopic evidence shows the early collagen necrosis and histological disorganization in 48 hours. So that is the basis for which it is non-popularity. Now, topical nitroglycerin, I already told, there are several parameters with some varying evidence. You can see here the patient satisfaction is initially very good, but there is no evidence, almost no evidence regarding the pain, rest pain and activity, as also relieving of the local tenderness. There is no donor large studies it is available. It is effective than placebo. There are several scattered studies there. It can be safe, but it is except headache and local rashes. So it is not effective for the long run. Now, high volume injection already, so steroid, normal saline, local anesthetic injections, especially used for the shoulder problems, because it causes the stretching effect of the fibrosis, which causes the pain. It has a local mechanical effect, disruption of the neovascularization, disruption of the neoinnervation, pain relief for the patients. It is a good short-term benefit, short and almost a medium-term benefit. There is no, several studies shows there is no long-term benefit. So platelet plasma, it is under interest. You can see here it is RCT and structure function relationship is needed, but it is not, it is lacking. And there is basically, that proves the high concentration of the cytokines and growth factor, that is proved, but moderately effective in reduction of the pain. And so also it provides the several cytokines, but how long it works, that is for the long run, how it works, and again how whether it can prevent the recurrence of development of this degeneration in neovascularization is not proved at all. So we have to search of anything which is a permanent solution. This autologous blood, I already told, it promotes the tendon healing with the help of some cellular humoral mediators. It provides the collagen documentation, collagen synthesis, promotes the organized angiogenic response to hypoxia. But still, it is for the long run how much it is. It cannot be repeated for about 2 to 3 times. For the long run, whether it can prevent the recurrence of this deformity, that cannot be proved. Now, so there are several other newer non-medical treatments like the shockwave therapy, low energy laser therapy, growth factor therapy, gene therapy. They can cause the temporary healing, but again, the problem is the same. That is for the long run, whether it can prevent the recurrence of this degeneration, because the degeneration is the part of the life. It happens. So whether unless we strengthen our bodies from the inner self, it is very, very difficult to make us to ultimately get the solution. So these newer treatments, that these are the which can be done from the outside to what or facilitation of the healing for the time being, that cannot be the long-term solution. Treatment for the tendon nutrition. So this is basically there are several studies. Ultimately, the one study which is done in the AIIMS, and they can show that the collection of some medical medicines like the vitamin C, low molecular weight specific nutritional agents like collagen peptide 1, chondroitin sulfate, sodium hyaluronate. Basically, that will help, that will directly act on the tenoblast as also the tenocytes, because it has a specific CD844 cell binding and cell binding protein, which is basically that helps for direct binding of these with the tenocytes and tenoblasts. And basically this what is the function of the low molecular, why the low molecular weight is beneficial than the high molecular weight substances? Because low molecular weight, basically they can withstand the gastric and the intestinal juice destruction. They can easily bypass this destruction of the gastric juice and intestinal juice. They can easily picked up by these cells of the intestine, and they can easily goes inside the lacteals which are basically rich in the intestine, and they can easily get into the system, and they ultimately, once he comes into the injured side, the inflamed side or degenerated sites, because of this CD44 receptors, they can easily goes inside the tendons. So that is the basis why the low molecular weight is beneficial. There are several other high molecular weight, but these are not helpful because they cannot absorb through our intestine. They cannot goes directly into the cell. They can work from the outside, but these molecules, the low molecular weight, collagen peptide, basically collagen peptide acts directly on the tenoblast. Chondroitin sulfate and sodium hyaluronate directly acts on the tenocytes. So basically, by acting on this tenoblast and tenocytes, they stimulate these cells for the matrix formation. So matrix synthesis is enhancing from the inner side. So they are actually the strengthens from the inside. that is most important, which is required for regeneration of the tendons in case of tendinopathy. And vitamin C is also required for maturation of the collagen. So this is so collagen is also synthesized. These are matured with the help of the vitamin C. The matrix is also important. I already told the motility of the tenocyte and tenoblast depends on the extracellular matrix, as also the oxygen. Now come to this a specific the specialist, that is L-arginine. So because of the neovascularization, we have to reduce the neovascularization. We have to increase the vascularity of the tendon from inside. So this L-arginine, basically it is a nitric oxide donor which can favorably exploit the neovascular changes to improve the oxygen and the nutritional supply to the tendons. And this M study shows that basically the average 6 weeks is required for reduction of these neovascularized vessels, which are basically ultimately they are not beneficial. They are actually they are causing the inflammation. They are ultimately responsible for the pain and swelling. So this neovascularized area should be actually stopped. And that's L-arginine with the provision of this nitric oxide donor, they basically doing this act. And by basically, so duration of this administration should be 8 weeks. So if we have a molecule of a combination, so we have vitamin, and that contains the vitamin C as well as this low molecular weight collagen peptide, chondroitin sulfate, sodium hyaluronate, as also the L-arginine in a single pack. That is the best specialist for regeneration of the tendons in affected tendinopathy, and that can be used for the 8 weeks. Then because 6 weeks is the average duration for reduction of these neovascularized areas, that to increase the vascularity of the tendons. So that is 8 weeks is sufficient enough. So and after 8 weeks we have to stop this specialist, that is L-arginine, and we can use the single combination. Now we are very much proud to announce that the Pharmate company that they are bringing this type of this combination, that is there's a Tendocare 4. Tendocare 4 basically it contains the vitamin C. There is a low molecular weight collagen peptide 1, chondroitin sulfate, sodium hyaluronate, as also the L-arginine, that is known as the Tendocare 4. That should be started if it is advanced stage of tendonitis. How will you know it is advanced and early? I already told that depends on the rest pain. If the rest pain is present, it is advanced stage. If it is intermittent pain following inactivity, with aggravating with some aggravating factor, that is specific factors, continuation of the activity, specific actions, that is the, and it is waived by the rest, that is the early stage. So it is advanced stage. We can use all these condition for at least 8 weeks, and followed by the only simple vitamin C and these 3 low molecular weight combination for another 12 weeks. So this is the mainstay for treatment of the tendinopathy. And this is the study, this is Arun Kumar Choudhury and et al, which has made this study, and it is already published. And this is the primary study, very molecular and primary study, which showed the combination of the low molecular weight collagen peptide type 1, chondroitin sulfate, sodium hyaluronate, vitamin C significantly improved the pain, decreased the Achilles tendon thickness, which is proved by the ultrasonographic study, and it improves the questionnaires, the specific questionnaires, 36 score is compared to the diclofenac treatment. So this is a very important study, landmark study. So how the L-arginine mechanism acts. So it increases the blood flow by reducing the neovascularization, by increasing the oxygen supply, increasing the tendon-specific nutrition, and it significantly reduces the pro-inflammatory markers, which is detrimental or destructive to the extracellular matrix. At the same time, it increases the proline and hydroxyproline levels, which supports the collagen synthesis. Excess L-arginine produces the ADMA. That is why it should be stopped once if action is over. So it should not be continued for more than 8 weeks. So this combination Tendocare 4 should be continued for first 8 weeks, followed by the Tendocare only for another 12 weeks. This is the treatment. So there are the L-arginine duration is already told. I'm not just repeating. Neovascularization tendinopathy from eradication stabilization. Basically, the Tendocare 4 containing the L-arginine, it should be continued for 8 weeks, not more than that, and this is not required at all. So recommended medical regimens: early tendinopathy is the Bonner stage 1 and 2. So there's a compelling movement restriction, occasional pain following inactivity, movement restriction. There is no rest pain. I am repeating. If there is no rest pain, that is early tendinopathy, but there is associated movement restriction, and USG that suggests degeneration. We can start this Tendocare. Otherwise, if it is a advanced tendinopathy, you can use the Tendocare 4. Now it is recovering tendinopathy. Patient presented with pain, but with treatment of the TendoCare 4 has now recovered, and then this current grading is Bonar 1, 2. The TendoCare. So the basics, if it is early tendinopathy, TendoCare, there is one tablet TID for 12 weeks. It is recommended by the AIM study. Whereas in the advanced and mock tendinopathy, which is wrist pain, tenderness, severe movement restriction, and that will suggest that is substantiated by the Doppler neovascularization, and that we start with the TendoCare 4, then one tablet TDS, that is thrice daily after food for 8 weeks, and ultimately once the neovascularization resolves, that is suggested by the pain is resolved and the degeneration may still persist. That is why we have to complete the treatment with the help of the TendoCare, plain TendoCare, which doesn't contain the L-arginine. So that is the one tablet thrice daily after food for another 12 weeks. So recommended medical regimen. I'm not going into this, just repetition of these other slides. This early tendinopathy symptoms is a mild, moderate restriction. Clinical range of motion is restricted stiffness. Bonar scored 1. USG Doppler study shows the mild to moderate degeneration, but no neovascularization. So duration should be the TendoCare 4, TendoCare plain. That should be continued for 12 weeks. Moderate tendinopathy is suggested by the moderate restriction of the movement, as also the pain, no rest pain, but there is pain which is almost always with some or even say just initiation of the movement or continuation of the specific action. But this range of motion is restricted, but some movements compromises. That is the Bonar score 2. So USG Doppler, we have to suggest that is moderate degeneration, but no neovascularization. In that case, also TendoCare should be continued for 12 weeks. But if it is advanced tendinopathy or traumatic tendinopathy or tendon trauma surgery, even after tendon trauma, once it is untreated, neglected, the tendon is ruptured, then again after the just surgery we can use it. You can have this category. That is the moderate to severe movement restriction, pain on movement, painful range of motion, and there's a Bonar stage 3 and 4, and then USG shows the neovascularization, moderate to severe degeneration. So you have to start with the TendoCare 4, with one tablet TDPC for 8 weeks, and it should complete the treatment with plain TendoCare, one tablet TDAC for TDPC for another 12 weeks. So efficacy of the therapies, you can see there are several treatments options: NSAIDs, corticosteroid, glyceryl trinitrate, platelet-rich plasma, autologous blood, eccentric exercises, extracellular corporate shortwave therapy, sclerotherapy, stem cell therapy. But ultimately, effect on prevention, there is no efficacy. You can see here whether it can prevent the recurrence. Obviously, no. So basically, if we regenerate, if we try to regenerate the tendons from itself, if we can regenerate the tendons from itself. So that is basically the mainstay of the treatment. So that will help in the healing for the present as well as in the future. That can prevent the development of the neovascularization, as also the neuralization, and ultimately that will lead to prevention of the rupture re-rupture in the future. So thank you. So this is the conditions. If I'm love to answer the questions. So what we have learned about the tendinopathy is the actual term. We have understood the pathology and why the tendon is the source of the pain, and also the some thickness, because it is a relatively avascular structure, and what is the mainstay of the treatment for the long run. That is that we have to choose the combination which can stimulate its extracellular matrix production by stimulating its cells itself, not from the outside, just from strengthening from itself. That is the combination of vitamin C and low molecular weight, the chondroitin sulfate, the collagen peptide type 1, as also the hyaluronic acid, as also the, in case of advanced stages, to reduce the neovascularization, you have to use some specific another combination, that is a L-arginine. So TendoCare 4, and it is a TendoCare, that is the mainstay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So if there is a question, I can answer.